You're welcome to this session. It is regional cooperation, stroke mutual recognition agreements. Yes, Mr. Daniels.
Sorry, I think just to get clarification, which state pension, which is
We said, do you have the translation sets? You have, both French and English. Okay. If you're not happy, please raise your hand so that we can assist. John, there's somebody there who needs a translation set. Okay. Please keep your hand raised. I'm Patrick Kagoro. I'm the chair of this session. Just to start, we are a bit worried because at exactly 5 minutes to 4, it was just the 5 of us. So we're wondering whether we are going to address an empty room, because I think you're having coffee and networking. So thank you very much for coming. Now we feel comfortable, and you're the most important people we want to interact with during this session. I've been touched by quite a number of presenters, especially during the plenary sessions, and we had one interesting one during the regulation session just a while ago. Matthews from Zimbabwe gave a very interesting example where a lady disappeared from his husband. I think you listened to that, and everybody, the people he called, all of them told lies, which was very discouraging, and the man was quite disappointed. But he didn't complete the story. Actually, what happened is the lady went ahead and gave birth to triplets. As the children grew up, the man realized that only one resembled him. And the relatives kept telling him, look, although these are twins, but these other two don't look like you. They don't look like us. So the gentleman was quite disturbed. So he decided, after several advices, that he should conduct a DNA test on all of them. Hold and behold, only the son who looked like him was actually his child. The other two had different results. So, on close examination and close questioning of the lady, she gave up and said, yes, you know, I think maybe these children belong to other men. So you mean when you spend the night out, you're doing funny things? He said, no, I didn't. It was quite a while ago. So they convinced all the other men to conduct a DNA test and found that the two children also belonged to other two different men. I'm told it happened, and I read a story recently. Somebody in America gave twins and also confessed that the other child didn't belong to the gentleman. So the man wanted to file for a divorce. He was very disappointed. The relatives told him, look, you better divorce this wife of yours. She has disappointed us. But the lady from divine wisdom told the man, we either make ourselves miserable or we make ourselves strong. The amount of work to get the same results, to be strong and to be miserable, is the same. So what do you choose? The gentleman, being reasonable, said, I think I choose to be strong. I forgive you all the past mistakes. These will be my children from now on. Don't tell anybody. But it was too late. Anyway, the man took over the children and looked after them until they were adults. In a way, that is the nature of regional cooperation. You don't have to fight each other for the mistakes you make. We have to accommodate each other. We have to develop together. We have either to be strong together, or we have to be miserable together. So what is regional cooperation? Regional cooperation is setting rules and building institutions which should be entered into by states of the same region. The main objective is it could be political, for political federation like we would want to do in East Africa, like what our founding fathers, including Nkrumah, the African Union. There's economic and monetary union. Then you have also organizational groupings, like the American States, Organization of American States, Organization of African Union. Some of them I said include economic and monetary union, economic union, the common market, like we have in East Africa. Then you have the customs union, the multilateral free trade areas like the COMESA. Now that is part of regional cooperation and regional integration like you have now in the EU. EU has gone a step further and even have a monetary union. You also have the Arab League. There are quite a number. Each continent has some kind of union so as to cooperate and have some economic advancement of their people. So the main aim really is for the neighboring states to enter into agreements to upgrade that cooperation. In Africa, we set up PAFA, Pan-African Federation of Accountants. And indeed, it has a steep hill to climb, but nothing is insurmountable. Because we have an issue here where the countries have different PAOs. And you'll find that each PAO wants to be independent and wants to be strong and doesn't want any interference. But as I said earlier, that there is strength in unity. And in East Africa, and I think in other countries, you'll find that different mutual recognition agreements have been signed and have been entered into so as to live in harmony and to have the idea of people moving freely, taking professional services into their member countries. I happen to live in Uganda, Kampala. I work with the central bank. My wife works in Kenya, Nairobi. So every other weekend I have to travel Nairobi on Friday with the last flight. Then come with the first flight on Monday morning. But I tell you, there are so many people because we have so many Kenyans who work in Uganda and Ugandans who work in Kenya. So they keep crisscrossing on Fridays and Mondays, especially professional accountants, because mainly the big four are manned by professional accountants from Kenya. And when we meet each other, we say, hey, guys, you've gone to do it. We call it quarterly returns, because you have to meet with your family and meet with your spouses. But that is the nature of cooperation. As a result, maybe it started earlier, but as a result of the mutual recognition agreements. But with us here, we have people who are renowned in their fields. We have Mr. Anthony Pierre. He's a member in practice. He's an accountant. He has traveled more than 25 hours without including the hours waiting 5 and plus. All the way from Trinidad and Tobago to come and give us the Caribbean experience, because he's a member in practice from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of the Caribbean Islands, including Trinidad and Tobago. Now we have Mrs. Michelle Cartier. She's a chartered accountant. She's also an auditor. She's come from FIDEF, and she's the president of the Network for the Professional Associations of Professionals, including doctors, including accountants. That's mainly in the French-speaking region. So she comes with vast experience in the cooperation in those French-speaking countries. Maybe she will hint also in the mutual recognition agreements, but the French in their colonies and their region, they have been strong. They have always kept as one. FIDEF is the International Federation of French-speaking Accountants, and she's the Chief Executive Officer. Then we have Alexis. It's French, it's a French name. Forgive me, it is in this it is French, I can't pronounce it properly. Now, he's a lawyer by profession. We call them land people or land friends. They believe they are the only people who are land, and they normally say accountants, we are just bean counters. We are not land like they are. So he has a lot of experience in legal affairs, and currently he works with the Organization for the Harmonization of Business Laws in Africa. And I thought that's very important. He will give us what these MRAs are all about, because as we progress, it has become so complicated to manage anything, especially which is government related, because everything has become legalistic. So he will decipher some of these laws, compliance and non-compliance of some of these laws. I get close to home. I have CPA Edwin Makori. He's the Director of Professional Services at the Institute of Chartered Public Accountants of Kenya. He will be giving us his experience as far as the mutual recognition agreement that we signed between the 5 member states is concerned, and its implementation and challenges. Now, yesterday we had another session. It was on trade and how the MRAs are being implemented and the challenges they are facing. And I think maybe Frederick will be chipping in. So there may be some overlap in case you attended that session. So you will bear with us in case there's that overlap, because we are discussing really one and the same thing. Now, without wasting much time, because there's somebody who will be coming here. He's behind there, actually. He's told me he's the timekeeper and he's very strict with the time. So we will have at least the next 45 minutes discussing the topics from these people, from the 4 people presenters. And thereafter, we will have question time. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Each person, each presenter will be given at least 10 minutes, and not more than 15, because we are time bad. I will start with Anthony, Mr. Anthony Pierre. Please come and make your presentations. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. I'm Anthony Pierre. I'm a chartered accountant in practice. I serve on the board of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of the Caribbean. I'm a resident of Trinidad and Tobago. I was invited to contribute to this panel as a representative of ICAC, that's the Institute of Chartered Accountants of the Caribbean, which is an umbrella body like PAFA, on the topic Regional Cooperation Mutual Recognition Agreements. In particular, my contribution will speak to the benefits of regional cooperation in strengthening the regional PAOs, experiences and challenges of regional cooperation, and together through discussions, we will seek to outline a way forward. My initial 10 minutes presentation is based on my experiences as a board member of the ICAC, and in particular, my involvement in the initiatives I will discuss with you. I will share views and opinions that are my own, but which I strongly believe are applicable to regional cooperation among regional PAOs. I am a regionalist and passionately believe in the spirit of regional cooperation. It is my understanding that the development of the accountancy profession is at different stages in the African continent. Some PAOs are in their infancy, while others have matured. This is not dissimilar to what pertains in the Caribbean region, though smaller both in terms of the number of regional PAOs and members belonging to these various territorial bodies. In my opinion, therein lies the first challenge of regional cooperation and any form of MRA among regional PAOs, also referred to in the Caribbean as reciprocal arrangements. The challenge lies in the fact that the less mature or less developed PAOs can be disadvantaged by MRA arrangements. This fear is not an unreasonable one, as maturity obviously brings with it resources, skills, knowledge, and experiences in executing the PAO's mandate that the less mature PAOs are unable to achieve. The end result is that members of the mature, more developed PAOs are better equipped to compete in an open market scenario, a condition necessary for any MRA to work. However, the world has become a global village, and there is free flow of knowledge and skills across national, regional, and international borders. The protection afforded by not entering into regional MRAs may well be a sense of false security, as regional and extra-regional players may enter the market space in various other ways and in various other forms, for example, through a network of firms. In my view, this makes a case for there to be development, mentorship, and cooperation from within regions like Africa and indeed the Caribbean, where I come from. Embracing regional cooperation within Africa and the Caribbean is, in my opinion, one way that the profession in our regions can become globally competitive. On knowledge and skills, we can and have demonstrated that we can match members of the profession from any other region in the world. However, insularity, deeply rooted in the history of both Africa and the Caribbean, keep us apart and unable to solidify our respective regional positions to compete globally. As we prepare to enter the third decade of the millennium, with a fast pace of technological change and advancement, it is clear to me that regional cooperation must become priority initiatives. How do we strengthen regional cooperation? Regional groupings of PAOs like PAFA and ICAC, have a pivotal role to play. I will highlight 5 initiatives being undertaken by the ICA in the Caribbean aimed at strengthening the regional PAO. The first one, ICA has established an affiliation agreement which all but one member body have signed. The agreement details areas where the regional body will take the lead role and other areas that will be left to the territorial PAOs for execution. Areas to be covered by the regional grouping include relations with international bodies such as IFAC, ACCA, and other regional and other international players, lobbying, educational standards, practice reviews and monitoring, and technical matters, to name a few. While the affiliation agreement itself falls short of an MRA, it lays the foundation for this eventuality. The second initiative, ICAC has been very successful in developing a regional practice monitoring program for all regional member bodies. So rather than the individual PAOs having their own practice monitoring program, there's a regional practice monitoring program. The ACCA was contracted as a service provider, and we have completed the first 6 years of this program. We recently negotiated an extension to the ACCA contract, which will be executed next month at our regional annual conference. The Quality Assurance Program will go a long way in ensuring that international standards and best practices are being employed by members in practice across the region, providing an international benchmark for the practice of public accounting within the region. The third initiative, ICAC hosts an annual conference very similar to the one PAFA is currently hosting. The ICAC conference is in its 33rd year of existence and acts as a major catalyst in the regionalization of the profession. It is the ICAC's flagship event and is growing annually. The conference assembles up to 800 delegates of professionals annually in an atmosphere of oneness where common issues are explored and common solutions found, an important ingredient in regional cooperation. The fourth initiative, ICAC started what we call a Big Brother project, whereby the more mature PAOs in the region are asked to adopt a less mature body, providing institutional capacity building, technical support, staff training, and other valuable inputs through exchange programs. There was a very successful initial twinning of 2 of our PAOs with very tangible benefits to the less mature PAO. On the heel of this successful initial project, another one was launched, and there have been a number of one-on-one collaborations among the regional bodies. The fifth initiative, ICAC has sought to address its governance practices head-on. Very often we find in umbrella bodies there are issues to do with the governance of the umbrella body. Who gets what? Who controls? Who is the president? Who are the officers? These are all questions that we must face head-on. There's an ongoing debate on the governance structure, practices, and processes at the ICAC. While this may appear disruptive at times, I believe the debate is helping define the role and importance of the ICAC to the profession in the region and can only result in greater regional cooperation. The Board of Directors, in addition to having representation from each territory, also consists of affiliate directors representing major global PAOs operating in the Caribbean. And I understand that's the same applies to PAFA. The affiliates cannot vote on issues but participate fully in all discussions, bringing a wider international perspective to debates. These are 5 areas I think that ICAC is doing well in fostering regional cooperation. I am not suggesting that we have found the formula that will allow us to have level playing field for all PAOs and full regional cooperation. But indeed, this acts as a bedrock on which we can build. I believe that we understand the benefits of regional cooperation. We have experienced firsthand through the initiatives I have outlined how regional cooperation contributes to the growth and development of the profession regionally. Allow me to expand on one of the initiatives both ICAC and PAFA have embraced and to offer my personal vision for our annual conferences. It is my opinion that there is the need to move the annual conference to another level, where it becomes a centerpiece of regional debate and discussion on major regional accounting, finance, and business issues. Where coming out of the various presentations and workshops, the ICAC prepares position papers to be disseminated among the region's captains of industry, business, and political leaders. PAFA can consider a similar approach to its annual conference. What this will do is establish the regional bodies as centers of regional thought leadership and will earn the regional profession the respect which will thrust our members in the forefront of recognition and respect in our respective regions. The challenges to regional cooperation are, however, real, and it will be remiss of me to ignore them. 1, I mentioned insularity before. ICAC, like PFA, comprises various national PAOs, and national identities are naturally stronger than regional identity. How do we get individuals to place region before country and remain a major this remains a major challenge for regional groupings like ICAC and like PAFA. Maybe we can discuss this and some solutions during the discussion phase of the session this afternoon. Secondly, apart from national identity, firms and network allegiance can also hamper regional cooperation. The Big Four and international networks tend to forge a form of regionalization unique to each firm's culture and their way of doing things. When representatives of the Big Four and international networks sit on the board of the regional body, firm and network allegiances can and do dictate the thinking of those members. This too we can discuss during the discussion phase this afternoon. Finally, I will end where I started. There is an inbuilt mistrust of more mature PAOs in the regional groupings by the less matured sister bodies. This mistrust, I think, grows out of the perception that the more mature PAOs aim to dominate the groupings. In the case of ICAC, I don't know that this perception is actual, but it is natural for the more mature PAOs to demonstrate thought leadership, resource availability, and institutional capacity not available to the less developed and less mature PAOs in the region. Is this a real threat to regional cooperation, or is it mere speculation and perception? I would like us also to discuss this during the discussion phase of this evening's or this afternoon's session. There's much more I can say, but I wish to pause here for the time being, and will be delighted to provide details and answer questions in the next phase of the deliberations. I thank you. You've been a most attentive audience.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Without wasting time, we'll ask Madam Tatia to go on the floor. And remember the challenges that Anthony has talked about, especially the mistrust of the mature PAOs by the smaller ones.
So, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to share this moment with you. I'll share this moment in French, sorry, because I'm representative of French, so let me speak in French now. Bien. Tout d'abord, vous voyez en quelques mots le sommaire de ma présentation. Je voudrais vous présenter en quelques mots la FIDEF, ce qui vous permettra de comprendre un petit peu plus facilement comment nous fonctionnons dans notre système de coopération. Donc, la FIDEF est une organisation internationale qui regroupe des organisations professionnelles de pays francophones, la notion de francophonie étant déterminée par l'appartenance à l'Organisation internationale de la francophonie. Donc aujourd'hui, ce sont 47 organisations dans 36 pays sur 4 continents qui sont membres de la FIDEF. La FIDEF est également une organisation reconnue par l'OIF et à ce titre, en fait, nous sommes consultés sur un certain nombre de sujets et nous partageons vraiment les préoccupations de l'OIF et en particulier depuis assez récemment sur les thématiques économiques, ce qui rejoint finalement d'assez près notre activité et nos implications professionnelles. Bon, quelles sont nos principales actions en tant qu'organisation, que fédération ? En fait, les organisations que nous regroupons sont en majorité des ordres de professionnels comptables. Donc, en fait, les représentants qui siègent au conseil de la FIDEF sont les présidents de ces ordres. Et nous avons également quelques associations de professionnels, notamment de l'enseignement, des universitaires en particulier. Donc, les actions que nous menons, c'est d'abord représenter nos membres dans les organisations internationales. Nous avons un rôle assez important et nous sommes très attachés à cette valeur aussi de défense de la diversité culturelle. C'est-à-dire que nous souhaitons vraiment, et c'est des sujets que de façon indirecte on a pu évoquer depuis hier, que la diversité culturelle soit présente, notamment dans les organes de normalisation. C'est-à-dire que chacun, avec ses particularités, puisse à un moment donné se reconnaître dans les normes internationales qui s'appliqueront dans son activité. Bien évidemment, cela se traduit en premier lieu pour nous par une obligation, nos membres étant francophones, c'est de traduire tous les dispositifs professionnels, en tout cas le plus grand nombre possible de dispositifs professionnels pour permettre à chacun de mieux comprendre, de mieux s'approprier en fait, les normes, les guides, tout ce qui peut être publié à la fois par l'IFAC et par l'IFRS Group. Nous avons accompagné en fait ce processus de traduction de systèmes de formation ou d'information et surtout nous axons énormément nos travaux sur le partage d'expérience. Et l'avantage en fait que nous avons, c'est certes d'avoir une langue commune, mais c'est aussi d'avoir une culture commune. Et dans cette culture, nous avons notamment des facteurs communs, en particulier sur la culture de droit écrit, et on pourra constater, et on va aborder assez rapidement le continent africain, nous pourrons constater qu'en fait, les pays africains, par exemple, que je cite, ont un droit tout à fait similaire au droit des Français. Donc ça permet effectivement de faciliter tous les processus de collaboration. Je tiens à signaler aussi que nous organisons ce que nous appelons des assises tous les 2 ans. C'est un grand événement en fait qui rassemble, alors, en général il est organisé en marge du sommet des chefs d'État de la francophonie, auquel nous délivrons en général un message. Et pour citer l'exemple de l'année passée, en novembre, nous avons tenu des assises au Sénégal sur le sujet de l'économie informelle, considérant qu'il nous paraissait important dans notre mission de pouvoir en fait créer un lien, puisque nous sommes très attentifs à ça, profession au service de l'intérêt général et notamment de l'économie de nos pays. Donc ça veut dire que quand on travaille pour l'Afrique, quand on s'intéresse à l'Afrique, connaissant les ratios du secteur informel dans les pays africains, il nous paraissait important de dire on ne peut pas aborder l'économie africaine sans l'aider à surmonter ce secteur informel et l'aider à passer dans une structure formelle. Donc c'est à titre d'exemple le sujet que nous avons traité l'année dernière, qui va faire l'objet d'un suivi, je pense à peu près pendant 2-3 ans, de relations importantes avec les gouvernements de nos pays représentés au sein de la FIDEF et avec toutes les parties prenantes. Alors, revenons effectivement au sujet de l'Afrique francophone, qui présente des caractéristiques très intéressantes finalement, notamment, bon, on a quelques zones, dirons-nous, en Afrique. On a la zone de l'Afrique du Nord, avec notamment le Maroc, la Tunisie, l'Algérie, bon, qui sont des pays quand même assez bien avancés en termes d'organisation professionnelle. En revanche, nous avons une zone que l'on appelait la zone subsaharienne, qui présente l'intérêt, vraiment un potentiel énorme pour nous, pour travailler, de disposer d'une zone commune qui s'appelle l'OADA, dans laquelle, en fait, on a des droits identiques, partagés par tous les pays membres de cette organisation de droit des affaires. Et nous avons, alors c'est pas tout à fait exact, mais 2 sous-régions qui chevauchent en grande majorité, en fait, les pays membres de l'OADA, une zone en Afrique de l'Ouest et une zone en Afrique centrale, qui, elle encore, dispose de dispositifs communs, notamment en matière économique et monétaire, et si l'on s'intéresse tout particulièrement à la profession, qui permettent la libre circulation des professionnels. Ce qui veut dire que, par exemple, un professionnel installé au Sénégal peut tout à fait et sans difficulté aller travailler en Côte d'Ivoire, au Bénin, au Togo, etc. Donc ça, c'est un avantage énorme quand on veut travailler effectivement et faire de la coopération avec les pays. Et je cite également l'Afrique, enfin ce que j'ai appelé de l'Est ou du Sud-Est plus particulièrement, avec Madagascar, les Comores et Djibouti. Donc, ça vous permet déjà d'apprécier un petit peu le contour de ce que l'on peut faire en termes de coopération. Donc, je l'ai dit effectivement, cette langue partagée qui est notre facteur commun. Alors, parmi nos membres, historiquement, on constate que certains pays ont perdu la pratique quotidienne du français, mais en revanche restent très attachés à la culture et à notre façon de voir les choses. Ce qui veut dire que, par exemple, quand on prend l'Europe de l'Est, on a certains membres, je vais citer l'Albanie, la Roumanie, la Bulgarie, qui évidemment ne pratiquent plus le français dans leur quotidien, mais qui souhaitent continuer à travailler dans l'environnement francophone et partager les expériences et les pratiques avec nous parce qu'on a cette même culture, on a ces mêmes référentiels et ces mêmes valeurs en fait que l'on partage. Et on a un autre facteur aussi, alors qui n'est pas toujours un atout, et ça on pourra en reparler, c'est que la plupart des professions construites dans ces pays ont adopté des textes assez proches de ceux de la France, avec une particularité qui en Afrique subsaharienne est plus nuisible en fait qu'un avantage, mais ça, on va faire en sorte de trouver des solutions et c'est un sujet sur lequel on travaille, parce que seuls les professionnels libéraux, c'est-à-dire les indépendants, sont intégrés dans l'institution professionnelle, c'est-à-dire que ne sont pas répertoriés tous les professionnels comptables travaillant en entreprise, travaillant dans les banques, travaillant dans l'enseignement, etc. Donc c'est effectivement une difficulté en termes d'effectifs et donc de ressources pour une institution professionnelle. Et d'une manière générale, une profession qui est très étroitement liée au gouvernement, notamment par le biais d'une tutelle, soit des services de l'administration fiscale, de l'administration du ministère de l'économie et du budget. Ce qui veut dire que, avec ça, vous voyez un petit peu le contour en fait qui constitue nos professions et nos instituts professionnels, c'est-à-dire un lien qui existe naturellement avec les gouvernements, donc un dialogue qui s'établit tout naturellement. Alors, on a posé comme principe au sein de la FIDEF que la profession était au service de l'économie de son pays, en fait. Et que, pour ça, elle devait être capable de trouver une structuration qui lui permettait de répondre aux besoins de cette économie. Et c'est pourquoi je citais tout à l'heure le sujet que nous avons traité de l'économie informelle. C'est-à-dire qu'en fait, on nous dit souvent en Afrique subsaharienne, il n'y a pas assez d'experts comptables. Mais combien d'experts comptables pour quelle économie? Sachant que la part de l'informel dans certains pays atteint 90% des flux économiques et qu'il y a très peu de sociétés listées, de sociétés cotées. Donc en fait, on a effectivement une activité qui est totalement connectée sur ça, et ce qui permet de mener en parallèle la croissance de l'économie et le renforcement, l'adaptation de la profession. Tous nos travaux sont faits sur la base évidemment du référentiel SMO, sachant que la difficulté qu'il ne faut pas non plus se cacher quand on travaille dans ces zones, c'est une instabilité politique et souvent une faiblesse de gouvernance des instituts. C'est-à-dire que quand on a des pays avec un faible effectif de professionnels membres d'une institution, il est évident qu'on a des difficultés à maintenir sur la durée d'un projet comme celui du renforcement d'un corps professionnel un niveau de gouvernance qui peut être stable. Ça, c'est un petit peu une difficulté. En revanche, l'atout de la coopération et des actions que l'on peut mener au sein de la FIDEF, donc là, ce sont des coopérations qui se mènent nord-sud et sud-sud. Là, il n'y a pas de différence finalement, ce sont des choses qui se partagent très très bien. On essaie toujours de le faire en partageant des outils et des pratiques communes. Ce qui veut dire que ça simplifie effectivement la façon de s'approprier les choses, puisque ayant un droit très, très proche, on a très peu d'adaptation à faire, et ça facilite la communication, la compréhension, et donc on peut plutôt se concentrer sur la formation et le partage de bonnes pratiques. Donc, ce qui permet, au cas particulier, si je reprends l'espace OHADA que je citais tout à l'heure, c'est un espace dans lequel on va pouvoir partager très facilement les standards, les normes, le code d'éthique, des guides pour travailler, et notamment des pratiques de contrôle qualité, notamment en déclinaison de la norme ISCQ1. Et ça nous permet en fait de dégager des potentialités de travail sur de la coopération beaucoup plus ciblée, et là on fait vraiment du sur-mesure avec chacun des pays, pour trouver des modules de coopération, soit globalement, soit au coup par coup, sur certains sujets. Ce qui permet de rentrer plus dans le détail et c'est sur des opérations beaucoup plus ciblées, beaucoup plus efficaces. Et notamment, je vais citer l'exemple du Sénégal, sur la mise en place du contrôle qualité, où on a pu trouver des solutions assez spécifiques en mettant en place, par exemple, du tutorat, dispositif qui n'a pas été testé jusqu'à présent. Et autre chantier sur lequel on a engagé un gros projet également, c'est le chantier des IPSAS, considérant qu'effectivement, c'était maintenant l'actualité qu'il fallait mener. Alors, petit point aussi qui facilite la coopération, il faut savoir que la plupart des professionnels africains, en particulier francophones, ont le diplôme français. Et les quelques diplômes qui ont été créés dans l'espace africain francophone sont totalement inspirés du diplôme français, ce qui permet, je dirais, de faciliter là aussi les processus de formation et notamment des échanges universitaires sur toutes les structures qui procèdent à de la formation. Voilà rapidement ce que je voulais partager avec vous. Donc, savoir que nous nous rencontrons au moins 2 fois par an avec réunion de notre conseil, mais également systématiquement des ateliers au cours desquels nous partageons des thèmes techniques et des bonnes pratiques. Et la recherche de partenariats, donc nord-sud ou sud-sud, pour faciliter en fait le développement de la profession. Je vous remercie pour votre attention.
Thank you very much, Madame Michelle Katia. Without wasting time, because we have very little time left, I will ask our legal counsel, Mr. Alexis Nzweku, to go and make his presentation. I think he's also going to present in French. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. I will make my presentation in French. I am a Cameroonian. Cameroon is a bilingual country with French and English as legal, equal official languages. But there is a saying in Cameroon that only Cameroon is bilingual, not Cameroonians. Donc, I'm rather a French-speaking Cameroonian. Donc, pour partager l'expérience de l'OADA, je voudrais avant tout remercier la MIPA et la PAFA d'avoir convié l'OADA à ce congrès. Je voudrais également présenter les excuses du professeur Sosa, secrétaire permanent de l'OADA, qui aurait bien aimé venir personnellement répondre à cette invitation, mais il en a été empêché parce qu'il devait conduire avec le président du Conseil des ministres une mission de haut niveau à Ouagadougou. Il me paraît important, en quelques mots, de présenter ce que c'est que l'OADA, avant d'indiquer en quoi l'OADA aujourd'hui peut servir de véritable catalyseur et de levier pour le développement de la profession comptable sur le continent africain. L'OADA, c'est un acronyme mis pour Organisation pour l'harmonisation en Afrique du droit des affaires. C'est une organisation internationale qui a vu sa naissance ici même à Port-Louis. Le traité fondateur de l'OADA a été signé le 17 octobre 1993 à Port-Louis. L'OADA, à ce jour, c'est 17 États africains d'Afrique centrale, d'Afrique de l'Ouest et de l'océan Indien. Et la mission assignée à l'organisation est très claire. Il s'agit d'assurer la sécurité juridique et judiciaire des activités économiques afin de stimuler l'investissement et créer un pôle de croissance en Afrique. Pour y parvenir, l'OADA agit dans 3 directions essentielles. C'est l'élaboration et la mise en vigueur d'un droit commun des affaires pour l'ensemble de ses États membres. C'est également la rationalisation des modes de règlement des litiges commerciaux. C'est enfin la formation et la recherche spécifique au droit OADA et au droit des affaires. Le système institutionnel de l'OADA comprend très rapidement une conférence des chefs d'État et de gouvernement. C'est l'organe suprême qui n'intervient que très rarement, puisqu'on a voulu faire de l'OADA un outil technique. Il y a ensuite le Conseil des ministres, les ministres des Finances et de la Justice des 17 États membres. Et ce Conseil des ministres constitue en quelque sorte le Parlement de l'OADA qui adopte les lois communes. Nous avons ensuite le secrétariat permanent qui a son siège à Yaoundé et qui est l'organe de coordination de l'ensemble du système. Nous avons une école de formation au Bénin et une originalité mondialement reconnue. Nous avons une Cour suprême unique pour les 17 États membres pour tout ce qui touche à l'interprétation et à l'application du droit OADA. À côté de ces institutions, on a d'autres organes, des organes de liaison avec les États, et plus intéressant dans le contexte de ce congrès, 2 organes d'appui technique au secrétariat permanent, le comité technique de normalisation des procédures électroniques et surtout la commission de normalisation comptable sur laquelle nous reviendrons. Les lois que l'OADA adopte pour être appliquées dans ces différents États donc, sont appelées actes uniformes. On en a 9 à ce jour. dont un acte uniforme portant organisation et harmonisation des comptabilités des entreprises. Donc, de façon plus spécifique, après cette très rapide présentation de l'OHADA, comment est-ce que l'OHADA peut servir de levier au développement de la profession comptable dans les États africains? On verra ce qui a été fait déjà et ensuite ce qui est envisagé. Au titre de l'existant, l'OHADA a procédé dans une certaine mesure déjà à une harmonisation de la normalisation comptable au sein de ces 17 États membres. Je le soulignais, un acte uniforme du 24 mars 2000 a été adopté qui règle de façon identique pour tous les États l'organisation et l'harmonisation des comptabilités. Et la caractéristique des actes uniformes, c'est qu'ils sont directement applicables dans l'ordre juridique interne dans les États sans qu'il soit nécessaire de procéder à une transposition. Et ils évincent tout droit contraire qui lui serait, tout droit interne qui lui serait contraire. Donc, on a un acte uniforme pour les 17 États membres relatifs au dispositif juridique de la comptabilité, et à cet acte uniforme est annexé un système comptable. Cet acte uniforme, je dois signaler qu'il est en cours d'actualisation. Également, au titre de l'existant, on a l'institution d'une commission de normalisation comptable et d'autres actions, je le soulignais, sont projetées, notamment la création et le développement d'un cursus régional de qualification professionnelle avec
to the African continent. They have given their view. Before I begin, I just want to make a disclaimer as usual is that what I'm going to put in is not the full view of the East African community, but this is the perspective of the East African community, but as compiled by myself. If there are any areas of divergence, then as a community, we should be able, since we're in the East African community arrangement, we'll know how to handle that through our own mechanisms. Protocol was signed, and with this, there are many other protocols that have been signed, and one of which relating to the customs union, which has greatly enhanced efficiency in the movement of goods and services within the East African region. Then there's the Common Market Protocol, where basically the whole idea of having the integration of the community, the East African community lies on. And within it, there's several articles that were going to facilitate that Common Market Protocol. One of it is the Article 11 that just basically looks at the free movement of labor and being able to mutually recognize academic and professional qualifications, how that is going to be granted, how the experience is going to be obtained, and how the requirements are going to be met, and the licensing of the same. The main aim there was to be able to look at how does the East African community harmonize their curricula, examinations, the standards, the certification process, and being able to look at the accreditation of education and training institutions. The Professional Accountancy Organization in East Africa then came together to leverage on the already integration of the East African community. And there are a number of issues that had to be looked at to come up with the East African community. One of it is to be able to go to a common standard so that any professional accountant in the East African community was meeting a prescribed set of standards agreed upon by the members of the professional accountancy organizations in the East African communities. The other issue that the arrangement was looking at was to be able to look at how do we reduce the issue of validation. And of this I'm looking at, we have currently 4 states, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Burundi, and each of these have their own PAOs, they have their own legislation, and there's the issue of capacity. Not all of the 3 or the 4 African states, the East African states, have the required capacity, and therefore there was need to look at how do we be able to enhance the movement of the accountants from one state to the other, and that meant looking at the admission framework that the professional accountants organization are going to look to put in place to be able to allow for capacity building within the East African community. Knowing that there was a capacity issue, then we needed to look at the efficiency that is going to be attained from this by having limited resources that are going to be able to serve the East African community from our professional accountants organization, the members who are there, and through the mutual recognition agreement, then was able to create a form of efficiency in the way member countries are able to look at, or member professional organizations are able to look at the admission of members and allowing them to practice from one country to the other. We've had our own successes in the East African community, and one of these is the Institute of Rwanda. For the Institute of Rwanda, we have been a mentor to that particular institute to the point of sponsorship of the Rwandan Institute to become a member of IFAC. That particular mentorship involved the issue of capacity building for the Rwandan Institute, a process that is still ongoing. The idea here was not to be able to basically move the professionals to Rwanda, but to be able to capacity build the institute to be able to run their own professional accountants organization and regulation. And therefore, most of the East African community countries have been able to provide that particular support by being able to offer exchange programs to the Rwandan Institute to be able to build that capacity, and we're confident to say that where they are right now, that capacity is at a point where we are confident that they're going to be mature soon and be able to become one of the strong PAOs in the East African region. There's the issue of the registration and the practicing of accountants. That has been a major success in the East African community, in that once you're registered within the East African community as a practicing accountant, then it becomes easier. There is within the mutual recognition agreement on how you are able to be recognized by the other professional accountancy organization and allowed to practice in that particular country. And therefore, with that, it has become easier for the members within the professional accountancy organization to be able to move from one region to the other. Currently, we're working on a number of issues that we need to be able to finalize, which is in the roadmap on this particular mutual recognition agreement. One of it is on the qualification framework. And as you all know, that the qualification framework has several elements in it, one of it being the syllabus that is going to be used for the administration of the accountancy examination, the practical experience framework, the registration of members or admission of prospective or aspiring professional accountants to the various member bodies. And that is a project that is jointly being handled by the Secretariat of our East African Community Institute of Accountants. The other issue that we are closely working on is the technical support in terms of standards. And for the technical support, I'm also going to look at the audit quality review, which I know that we are having international support with the other professional accountancy organization internationally to be able to improve and make our audit quality review process to be of the quality that they will be a benchmark to international standards. Regulation and disciplinary is also the other area that you're looking at, and we all know that this is one of the areas that has been a point of focus both internationally and within the African region. And basically is to be able to look at how do we look at the legislation of the various countries to strengthen the legislation of those countries, and besides that, being able to look at the disciplinary process of the same. The session chair has indicated that my time is up. I'll want to say this, that for the East African community, there's a lot that has been put in place and is happening within the East African community. And I just want to say that the other member body that we are trying to help besides their political challenges is Burundi. Burundi has just come up with, that professional accountancy organization has barely 130 members with almost 70 associates, but we are working hard to be able to see that that particular professional accountancy organization is up to the level of the mature professional accountancy organization that in the East African community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edwin. Now we open the floor. The timekeeper is about to come. He will tell us we have about 15 minutes to go. So I won't summarize what they have said. Let's open the floor, and I'm sure you have many questions that you'd like to ask. Hands up. Okay, you are number one. Yes. Microphone, please. Please be brief, introduce yourself briefly. Please don't tell stories. But okay.
My name is Lyndon Etale from ICANN, Nigeria. I'd like to thank all the speakers. Anthony mentioned the issue of trust between matured BAOs and less matured. But I think I do not see trust becoming a problem here. One, because mutual cooperation or regional cooperation is a matter of intellectual work, not in numbers like in democracy. So I don't see the problem of trust. But I have some basic questions. If you work in the big fours, you can, work across countries, like him working in Kenya or a Kenyan working in Uganda. But can we see real cooperation in terms of, one, can an indigenous Kenyan firm maybe merge or partner with an indigenous Nigerian firm and work together? Okay? Can we see real cooperation in terms of, can an ICANN member from Nigeria be employed in Kenya and work in Kenya for that qualification, not necessarily working in the big four? Or can it be just a study exchange, like an accounting firm in Kenya, say, send 4 accountants, or the PAO, send 4 accountants to Nigeria to work, and Nigerian PAO or Nigerian accounting firm send 4 accountants to Kenya to work, like an exchange program? Can we see real cooperation? Thank you.
Okay, a lady this time. Okay, in the meantime, when they're thinking about it. Mr. Luboa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and the panelists. I'm Luboa from Uganda. My worry is with the mode of the big brother in ICA. Don't you think this can have an effect in the long run with these other uniting or other bodies assuming that, being affected by this, what I may consider superiority complex? Two is, I wanted to get a clarification from Madam.
Enough?
Yes.
Okay, that should be the last question.
Yes.
Okay.
Whether these these practitioners in the Francophone countries have the freedom to practice anywhere, assuming it's from Cameroon, can practice in another country, and so on, in the Francophone region. Thank you very much.
Sorry. You, then Keto. There's a question here, Madam Keto. Then later on to here. He was. And so please be brief.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Dr. Wesley Spanda from Zimbabwe. My question is directed to East Africa. I understand from your explanation that you had your own accounting standards, which are not international accounting standards. Now, you have got Rwanda, which has moved to international accounting standards. How do you intend to create collaboration when the accounting standards that you are using are different?
Good. Madam Keto.
Thank you, panelists. I'm Keto from Uganda. I think one of the problems we have as Africans is our individualism and the want to be independent countries. The East African Mutual Agreement was signed, I think, in 2011.
2011, 14th of September.
Yes, and I am looking at the progress we have made in relation to the implementation of that mutual agreement. You will correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that that problem of individual countries, rather than embracement of the African whole, is still holding us back. How do you think we can handle that? And I heard from Ohada about, I don't know whether I had it right, the fact that they have a law. How did they do that law that enabled them to have a cohesion within them and a legal framework that enabled them work together? How can we borrow something from that? Is it something that we can use? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Question time is closed. Any burning question or comment? None. Okay, we'll hear from our panelists.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to respond to the first question on international standards, just to make it known that we adopted the international the accounting standards in 1999 and dropped our Kenya accounting standards. And since then, we are on international accounting standards. So that means the convergence within the East African region is based on international accounting standards. It's very smooth. There's the issue of the problem of individual countries and being able to pull this progress. There are challenges to this particular mutual recognition agreement. One of it is legislation. As you all realize, or you all know, that each of the PAOs in most of the countries are based on an act of parliament. And therefore, that means that there are certain provisions within the acts of parliament that hinder that particular progress that we would have anticipated as members in the East African community. But this is an issue that is being addressed through the East African Community Secretariat and the East African Community Assembly, so that some of the issues that are a challenge can be addressed at that point, and then it will facilitate the process of the mutual recognition agreement. I will not per se look at it as an individual obstacle. Is rather a legal challenge that we need to be able to pursue and be able to handle in a way that the political process is able to buy into the mutual recognition that is there within the East African PAOs and facilitate that process. There's a question that was asked on integration of regional firms. Is it that Nigerian moving from Nigeria can work in Kenya, or a firm in Kenya can integrate with another firm in Nigeria? It takes us back to our laws, which becomes the hindrance to that mobility. And carving up that regional cooperation and mutual recognition agreement is one step to it, so that you are able to see where are the obstacles. How do we handle those particular obstacles? From there on, then we should be able to have this African region. And I think we're in the right direction. We have PAFA in place. As we start with the small regional corporations, that is going to flow up to PAFA, and maybe, we never know, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we will not be talking about this anymore. I think the other issue is the brother effect, and
Okay, I just want to address two of the questions asked. The first one about the big brothering of the PAOs by the more mature organizations taking care of the younger ones. In the Caribbean context, it has worked well, in that what you're really doing is lending institutional capacity to the less developed PAOs. They tend not to have the resources, they tend not to have the know-how in terms of how to organize themselves into constructive PAOs. They struggle with setting exams and stuff like that, so that the more mature ones can lend support in getting them off the ground and getting them started on that. It has worked well in our context, and I don't see why it shouldn't work in the African context as well. Concerning the other question I want to address is the question of the movement and the integration of firms. I can't speak for the other big four, but I can speak for Deloitte, where I'm an ex-partner of Deloitte, just left last year. And I know the Caribbean firm has in fact become one firm. So although we operate in 13 countries from Bermuda in the north to Suriname in the south, it is really one legal firm with partners in each territory. What that does is that when we go out to compete for work, it is, we draw resources from wherever they are available within the firm, within the regional firm. And that has the impact of, making you more competitive on your bidding because, auditing has become a very specialized skill set, as you know. And the skills that are required for financial services audit, for example, are not the same skills required for, say, an energy-based audit. And in my view, that regionalization by the firms can in fact stymie the regional PAOs and the members of the PAOs in terms of MRA and having open markets in which to operate, because obviously they will have an advantage over the independent firms or the smaller firms, the SMPs in particular. So that's my take on that particular thing.
Bien, je crois que la question qui m'était destinée concernait l'exercice, la libre circulation des professionnels en fonction de la détention d'un diplôme. Donc, comme je le disais tout à l'heure dans ma présentation, si l'on prend les deux exemples très spécifiques d'Afrique subsaharienne, de l'Ouest Afrique et de l'Afrique centrale, nous avons effectivement la faculté d'imaginer qu'une personne qui est titulaire d'un diplôme reconnu au niveau de ces... Alors, les deux structures ne fonctionnent pas pareil. Je ne vais pas avoir le temps de rentrer dans le détail. Mais en revanche, effectivement, dans cette zone géographique, la libre circulation est prévue. J'ai dit également, tout à l'heure, j'ai évoqué le fait que la majorité des professionnels avaient en plus le diplôme français en général, donc ce qui serait encore un autre facteur éventuellement de capacité à circuler. Je voudrais simplement citer un travail qui a été fait à titre d'illustration, et je pense que c'est quelque chose qui pourrait être reproduit entre pays dans l'avenir. Nous avions fait un travail entre le diplôme français et le diplôme des CPA canadiens, et nous avions, alors c'était un travail très très long qui a consisté à mettre en parallèle le contenu total des syllabus en fait de la formation et de voir si c'était comparable ou pas, et si on pourrait imaginer quelqu'un ayant le diplôme français, par exemple, pouvoir aller au Canada avec son diplôme. Et en fait, on s'était aperçu qu'il y avait une couverture extrêmement importante en commun des matières et qu'en gros, il n'y avait plus que les aspects, je dirais, strictement locaux à passer. Et c'est vrai qu'on a fait une analyse à partir de ça en disant, de toute façon, un diplôme d'expert comptable, dès lors qu'on respecte les standards IES, dès lors qu'on analyse le contenu, à savoir des matières qui sont relativement neutres. Je vais citer par exemple les techniques de gestion, les techniques d'audit, elles sont communes, elles sont neutres. On pourrait tout à fait imaginer que le diplôme d'expert comptable, c'est un peu comme la fleur qu'on appelle marguerite. Il y a un cœur commun qu'on pourrait effectivement partager, et autour de ça, il y a des pétales qui sont des choses très spécifiques au pays, du type son droit fiscal, son droit social, son droit des sociétés, etc. Et à partir d'une approche sous cette forme, on pourrait vraiment simplifier tout le processus de déplacement des professionnels. Ceci dit, et juste pour finir, on a eu en Europe, puisque, bon, étant française, je suis membre de l'Europe, on a eu l'expérience et on s'est posé la question à un moment donné de dire, dès lors qu'on ouvre la possibilité d'échanger, puisqu'on a un dispositif qui permet au niveau européen d'échanger les services, comment ça va se passer au niveau de la profession? Et on va voir arriver des professionnels de partout qui vont vouloir soit aller exercer dans d'autres pays ou soit venir en France. Et on s'est rendu compte que c'était très marginal. C'est-à-dire qu'en fait, il y a très peu de professionnels qui veulent bouger finalement. Donc c'est un semi-problème. En revanche, je pense qu'on a une solution possible qui est purement technique sur l'analyse du contenu de nos diplômes. Voilà la réponse que je pouvais apporter.
Okay. Alex, can you summarize in 1 minute?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Juste pour rappeler que le développement de la profession comptable et l'harmonisation de la pratique comptable sont au cœur du programme de l'OHADA pour les 2 et 3 prochaines années à venir, et qui a certainement de la place pour une collaboration avec les professionnels de terrain, avec les organisations comme la PAFA. Merci, monsieur.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. Please join me with an applause for our 4 panelists. Thank you very much, audience, for being so attentive. In the last session, we had what they called a neck disease. The neck couldn't support the head, but what I saw here was that everybody was attentive. Now, from Anthony, to summarize, because our time is up, regardless of the threats from the Big Four, he said he's a pan-Caribbeanist. Here we have Pan-Africanism, but for him, he says he's for Pan-Caribbean. He wants unity. And then Michelle emphasized the common culture and most issues and common laws, and operating, not 17, in the French-speaking countries. They offer diplomas and degrees for the profession, and I think they have gone a long way towards harmonization. I need to find out whether they follow the international accounting standards. Alex, he says OHADA is a catalyst for development in Africa. Currently, they are working to harmonize the laws in the 17 countries, including the inventory and the accounting system, so that they are visible wherever they are. My brother Edwin, on regional integration, he emphasized on the development that the slogan which came up for the East African community as one people or one destiny. He also summarized the ICANN member, whether we can move freely. Yes, as far as Pan-African Federation of Accountants is concerned, we are very optimistic that we'll end up one day, maybe not in our time, but we'll end up with one profession in Africa. We are too optimistic to be fearful, and we are too determined to be defeated. So I'm sure we'll be successful. There's no doubt about that. So in other words, if we can't run, if we can't fly, we are going to walk. If we can't walk, we are going to crawl. If we can't crawl, we are going to do anything possible that will keep us moving forward as accountants, so that at the end of the day, we have one professional accountancy qualification in Africa. This business of regional integration, after all, we may be having one Africa. So we'll move freely, wherever you want. In Nigeria, the market is so big. I think there are over 120 million, close to 150 million. So we can take our professional services and compete with the fellow Nigerians there, and also come to East Africa. And maybe we'll also come here in Mauritius. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your participation, and thank you for the good questions that you have asked. Thank you.